Hey guys, another Friday wrap, strap in. Last week I said, all right, next week we're going to talk about let's treat your life like it's a business. Put the PowerPoint together, not really feeling it. So I'm actually going to go back to one that we recorded, we didn't record it, we put together last year, but I just didn't get a chance to record it. I'm actually fascinated by this topic and really interested to present it. Where do banks get their money from? Some of it might make sense, but let's really think about it. All right, general advice warning, not really sure how this one relates today, but you've seen it before. I'm not going to go into it here. Where do banks get the money that they lend borrowers? And as a bonus, the government has billions of dollars in debt. Who do they borrow money from? All right, let's talk about the banks. And for the sake of it, think about lending money to people like you and me who want to buy a property and need to lend money to do so. Okay, 60% of that money comes from domestic deposits, so personal and business bank accounts. So you've got a term deposit, you've got money in the bank, whatever it is. The government use that and they lend that out to people. They might pay you 2% and they might lend it out 4%. And that's how they make their squillions of dollars. 20% comes from short-term debt securities. Debt security is something like a bond, and we'll talk about that in a second. 10% comes from long-term debt securities, and another 10% comes from other, and they might lend money from, say, the RBA, the Reserve Bank of Australia, as an example. Are there limits on the amount of monies that a bank can lend? You would hope there are, and yes, there are. Okay, this is a highly regulated environment. The last thing we want to do is one of these guys, or the last thing we want to see, is one of these guys having people go to the bank and say, "Oh, I'd like to take my money back," and they go, "Oh, actually, we don't have it because we gave it all away." So the idea is to protect our industry, to protect the integrity of the banking system. Happy days, all good. The downside is it does reduce the profitability of the banks because they want to lend that money out. They make that 2% or whatever the differential is. They want to get as much of that as they can, but they already make enough money. Who cares about the banks? All right, what are bonds? Not these kind of bonds. Bonds where we talked about 20% of the money comes from short-term and long-term bonds. Effectively, a bond is a financial instrument where somebody issues the bond and they borrow money. So let's read this here. A bond is an interest-only loan agreement for a set period of time between an issuer and a buyer. So the bond is a borrowing from somebody, and then in return they get paid interest for lending the money, and at the end of the term they get paid their money back. So it's kind of a loan. It's called a bond. Okay. Bonds can be traded on the ASX. If you've got, say for instance, your super, if it's in a balanced option and you've got a portion of fixed interest, term deposits, things like that, you're going to have bonds in your portfolio. Okay, who issues bonds? The governments, as an example. Okay, so they'll issue a bond, borrow money from somebody, and pay back the money via interest and a return of capital. Large companies, banks, big companies also issue bonds. Had the question at the start: how do the banks get their money? Bonds. Okay, this is how the governments borrow money. If you've got fixed interest in your super, like I just said, then the government is borrowing money from you. The banks obtain about 30% of the money they lend out to borrowers. If you've got fixed interest in your super, then these guys are borrowing money from you. Okay, pretty cool. So there you go, guys. Where do the banks get their money? Let's go right back here. 60% from deposits and 30% from bonds, 10% from others, loans from the RBA. They have, in this instance, receipts of funds. They pay you interest on your money and then they lend it out. Okay, and that's how they make all their money. They make some others way as well, but I would guess, this is how they make the biggest portion of their money. All right, the $100 question. What is our cash rate? It went up 8 times last year, okay? The interest rate, what is the official cash rate at the moment? That's all I want to know. Send me an email, tell me what that interest rate is. One of you will go in the draw to win $100. Doesn't get much easier, $100. I wouldn't say no to it. All right, guys, Friday wrap, done and dusted. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.